I'm excited about this one. I love the band Red. This is a Christian rock band that I used to listen to quite a bit. I don't know all their songs, but there were several of their big hits that I absolutely loved. And so I'm excited that I get to check it out again after all these years. Thanks to Mighty Warrior for making this suggestion. This one is called Shadow and Soul. Question. Subscribe, comment below. When you hear the words shadow and soul, what is the first thing that pops into your mind? Don't think about your answer too much. Just type away. Free association, anything and everything that comes to mind. I'd love to know in the comments. Are you ready? Here we go. Okay, let me go back. Hard from the start. I like it. That voice, I recognize that voice from my Red listening days. It's a unique voice. I dig it. You don't belong here. Caught in my soul. You caught inside my So far, I could see this being, yes, struggling with, inner demons and struggles. Mighty Warrior had mentioned that it's about battling inner demons and sinful nature. And so far, I could definitely see that. But I do think that it could even be about, struggling with mental health and those kinds of struggles when you feel like something's wrong with you and you're trying to get it out. You have it buried and you feel helpless. But from a Christian perspective, I could see this being people thinking about fighting some type of inner demon or sinful nature, struggles, temptations, perhaps. This is beautiful. I really like this. I hadn't heard this one before, but I love the crescendo that the whole orchestra is bringing in. The strings, this is beautiful. The melody, it's this beautiful contrast between the staccato of the metal of the drums, the guitar, with that flow that the strings bring in. It's a duality between dark and light, perhaps, between something hard and something gentle and soft that weaves its way through, trying to find the depths of a person, of a soul, shadow and soul. like that. That scream. That was a high note. Nice. Huh. Wow. I don't know if I've ever heard him sing like that. The boundary fading. That thing we try to separate shadow and soul from fades. You feel like it's merging, perhaps? This was a beautiful piece. I love the screaming in between, but I also really appreciate just how passionate and dramatic the orchestra was in this one. I know they often play with, that mix between metal and the symphonies, the orchestra, and a lot of the strings and a lot of their songs, but I hadn't heard this one yet. This was from the 2015 album of Beauty and Rage. I see a lot of duality here in a person that's trying to make sense of the shadow and soul, feeling like that line, the boundary between the two is fading, feeling like something needs to be buried and kept. This is not for you. You don't belong here. Caught in my soul, you caught inside my shadow. I'm seeing a person, a man or a woman, who is maybe addressing darkness within their, from the Christian terminology, it would be, talked about maybe as their sinful nature, those demons inside, right? Even non-religious people might talk about, oh, you're battling some demons, aren't you, right? This feeling of there's something evil within that I'm trying to keep down. You don't belong here, caught in my soul. And I think that even pre-Christianity, there's often been a desire for people to make sense of what we deem good or evil. Where does that come from when a person hurts another? Where does that come from, that temptation to lie, our lust, our greed, our tendency for violence, and all the things that are deemed evil? Religious or not, a lot of us, I think we can agree on what most of us would think is not ideal or not moral, not ethical. And in human beings, there's this dance or this battle, if you will, that tension of wondering, where does that come from? And different religions will have a different explanation for it. Even in psychology, there might be different ways of trying to explain what this is, In Christianity, it being called maybe the sinful nature. In psychology, perhaps, or in other circles, it might be referred to as that ego. That part of us that we don't really want, that we don't feel like we can control, but it's caught in our soul. Buried, I kept at you. Helpless, I'm reaching out. Now my question is, who are we talking about when he says I'm reaching out? Are we reaching out for that part of our soul that we have been trying to keep at bay? Or is he reaching out to God, hoping for some type of salvation? Waiting for me, lost between shadow and soul. My untold still awaits. That sounds very poetic and beautiful. And I wonder if by untold, he's referring to the things he hasn't told anyone, the things that he's not willing to say, the things he keeps buried in secret. It's still lingering, it's still waiting. Or my untold, as in the parts of me, the story that is yet unwritten, that is untold, the parts that have not been revealed yet, still waits. I'm still waiting to see how this story will finish, what will be told. Find me in the dark. I'll meet you below shadow and soul. I wonder here if we could interpret this also as a conversation, reaching out to God, crying out for someone who would be willing to go below with us, below into the secret, into that place below shadow and soul. There is something powerful about these kinds of lyrics that have us conversing, that open our eyes to different ways of looking at the world and conversing about these concepts, because a lot of times it would be easy to slap an easy fix or an easy answer on things. Well, this is this way because of ABC. It takes a lot of strength and courage to look below and to not just say, well, there's good and there's evil, there's your righteous side and there's your sinful nature and you need Jesus, end of story, happy birthday. What about going below all those things? What about being willing to meet someone below the shadow and the soul, to really ask questions about who am I in my essence? What's the difference between essence and existing? Is this my sinful nature or am I simply being a human? Where does that come from, that feeling of jealousy? Where do these thoughts and these feelings come from? And the way that I grew up in a very conservative Christian household, and also to a degree my personality and other influences, they for the longest time had shaped me to be this kind of person that I just, for the most part, believed what I was told. Not always, but in many ways. I wanted to be obedient. I wanted to get it right. There was a huge fear of God and desire to be righteous and to please God and to be good, to get it right. And in that, unfortunately, looking back, I don't think there was strength in that, knowing what you believe and going against what you think is wrong, even if you have to speak up against peers that you think are doing something wrong. That my dear friend of mine, who's known me since 3rd, 4th grade, she reminded me recently that there's strength in that, courage in saying, no, this is not okay, what you're doing is wrong, and I'm not going to partake. And at the same time, I do also wish that there would have been more space that I would have made for myself to question things and to ask and to look below, versus being told something is wrong, and then the second I thought that or did that, I felt ashamed, versus understanding the reasons. You're a young teenager, of course you're going to want to have sex. And instead of just looking at it as this is wrong until you get married, having honest conversations about why or why not it is okay or it isn't okay. Having empathy for one's own humanity and understanding there's a simple science behind it, a hormonal explanation as to why some temptations are hard to exist. Not necessarily because of your sinful nature, but because of freaking hormones. Or, and I'm giving that as one example, the list goes on and on, our desire to partake in substances or drink something. Is that really just a sin that we must refuse? And oh my goodness, the darkness of my soul, my sinful nature has me wanting to do this. Or could we talk about curiosity and the human mind? And I'm not saying that to say everything's fine and everything's relative and let's just do it all. That's not what I'm arguing. But I'm looking for a place where we can talk about, where does that come from? What is it in human beings that makes us curious? What is it about us that we want to partake and try substances that might open our mind or make us view the world in different ways? What is it about these things that cause addictions? What is it about us? And perhaps also, what voids are we trying to fill? Let's talk about that. Let's go below the shadow and the soul and talk honestly about our temptations and not just say, well, this is a temptation, you must stay away from it, I rebuke this. Let's be honest. There's an honest conversation here. My darkest love, you live in secret, my heart unknown. What is that darkest love? Is this a person that's saying these things that I love so much that I want to have? They live in secret. The things that I love so much that are so hard to shake, those inner demons, that inner sinful flesh, as the Christian might say. My heart unknown, it calls, it cries to reach you. Is this someone saying to God, the depths of my being, including those things I love so much that I know I shouldn't love? All of that, all of me cries out to you. There's a Bible verse that says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. And there's other verses like it that focus on this idea of make God's desires yours. Seek his kingdom, his things first, and everything else will fall into place. And that formed my young adulthood, where my goal was to become less of me, more of Jesus. And the difficulty with that is, as honorable or admirable as that might be sometimes, the difficulty is when we're erasing ourselves, where is there room to ask, well, then why did God make us unique to begin with? If we're supposed to just erase ourselves. And ironically, when we erase ourselves and we become more of what we think God is like, that picture of God is still influenced by other people, right? We say, well, the Bible said this, but a lot of times it's just interpretations made by man. A lot of people, they study the pastor more, I read this the other day, than they study scripture. And by scripture, I don't just mean the Bible, I mean history and other historic texts and looking at things in context and questioning things. A lot of times we form our sense of self around what people have said, and they, based on what they've been told. Where is there room to ask that question? And as I was listening to this, I was seeing a deep longing and an honest conversation about the things we really love. I think there is a turmoil in many people, Christian or not, where we crave things, we love things, we're drawn to things, and we know we actually shouldn't. We keep it secret. And the more we keep it secret, the more it festers, the more it turns into addiction and into problems. Because there's something in everything people do that is not all evil. For example, I'm going to give you an extreme example. A lot of people that find themselves addicted and trapped by pornography, at the heart, that longing for intimacy, that longing for feeling good, for arousal, that longing for human connection, that attraction to the human body, I would argue in and of itself is not a bad thing. That's human, right? To be attracted to something, to enjoy adrenaline rushes and dopamine fixes and oxytocin releases. It's human to be attracted to certain things. But when we're now being fueled by lust, and now I'm being addicted to this, or I am using something in lust that actually exploits certain people groups, and I'm doing something that doesn't honor the covenant I made with my spouse, that affects me physically and my performance abilities, that affects the way my brain is wired, literally changing the chemistry of my brain. And this goes for other substances too, right? Our longing to feel good or to enjoy a certain substance or to long for what it might feel like to have experienced something. That longing in and of itself is not necessarily evil. But now when I become addicted to that same substance, when I now lose all inhibitions and I hurt those I love, when I now don't focus on what matters in life, in the short life we have, it now becomes a problem. The very same thing that might have been meant for good initially becomes the enemy. And I think everything in life is this duality where there is a need for us to talk about these things and to ask, why is that my love? And why am I calling it a dark love? I'm keeping it hidden. Why? The second that we keep things secret, things, like I just said, can fester, can become a problem. And I think through relationship, ideally, relationship with God, with ourselves, with others, there should be room for us to sit down and look deeper than just the symptoms. There's a struggle with certain things that you're keeping secret, that love that you can't shake. And you're, especially for religious people, you're told God is supposed to be your biggest love. Righteousness, that's what you're supposed to care about, right? Seek God's kingdom first. And deep inside, if we're honest with ourselves, though, we say, yeah, I know that's what I'm supposed to be doing, but I like this. I like that. And I'm just being told that's wrong. Why do I love what I'm not supposed to do so much, right? Why does it feel so good if it's wrong? And I think what's missing here sometimes is that we go deeper and we talk about what's that human need beneath all of that we're actually trying to meet. Maybe all these other things that end up actually harming us. That was not an English sentence. They are harmful, but the root of it was a human desire. And how can we meet those human desires in a wholesome way that don't cause ourselves or other people harm? And as I kept listening, I was also wondering, okay, one way to interpret this is that sinful nature, as Christians would say, or that inner demon. But I also wonder if there's a way to reframe this. Hunger abandoned, I hid you right beneath. Shadow and soul, my untold still waits. What if what's beyond those layers of what we deem sinful nature, what we deem wrong, what we deem those inner demons we're trying to fight so hard, where we're screaming to God to be liberated from the depths of our soul? What if below that layer of our perceived darkness is actually our untold story, who we were really created to be? The divine within us, true beauty, true godliness, my untold, I'm waiting, find me inside. That endless night, that feeling that the shadow we've been keeping buried is our demise. Maybe before that, deeper than that, is that if we were indeed made in the image of God, there's so much more beauty, strength, and righteousness beyond that. Maybe underneath the things that we do that the Christian would call sin, or even unreligious people might deem immoral or wrong, maybe underneath that is a human and a soul that is longing for someone to reach down and say, I see you. And for that freedom to reveal those secrets and say, this is what I'm struggling with. And then to not be judged, to not be condemned, but for someone to look deeper and say, beneath that is a human desire. How can we meet that desire in a way that doesn't lead to addiction, that doesn't lead to chemical imbalances and unhealthy neural pathways being formed and marriages failing and bodies decaying? How can we meet those needs? Is there a need underneath maybe that's very human and God designed even perhaps? This is a very interesting song, and the whole composition was beautiful. It had that signature red heavy metal violins and strings element, but it felt much more orchestral and like this ride to me. Thank you for the suggestion, Mighty Warrior. What do you guys think about this one? Do you listen to Red? Do you like them? Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next ride. Ayo!